It's time again for another installment of the basics, and on today's show we're going into the Star Trek card game once again, and I want to talk about outposts and to a lesser extent sites. You need outposts in the game. You have to put them down at locations on your space line, which allows you to report personnel and ships, but there's a myriad of different things you can do with these outposts, and I'm going to show you in just a few short seconds. Now, the affiliation you choose to build your deck around obviously determines the outposts you're going to use to a certain extent, unless you have a two-affiliation deck with one of those affiliations being non-aligned. So, for example, Federation has its Federation outpost, Klingon with Klingon, Romulan with Romulan, etc. But in addition to just having the outposts, which just have shields of 30 or 32, and no weapons, obviously, in a later expansion, they also came out with headquarters. But even though the headquarters have shields of 43 or 44, which is awesome for an outpost, they have to be used on certain planets only. So, for example, the headquarters for Federation is the Office of the President, and that's only on Earth, so you can only use it at Earth. The Great Hall for the Klingons is only on Kronos, so you can only use it on Kronos. And the Continuing Committee is only on Romulus, so you can only use this headquarters on Romulus. Now, what you can do is you can use the Neutral Outpost, which has shields of 24. This can be put anywhere at a spaceline location, planet, space, whatever. And if you need a secondary outpost to conduct repairs or transfer personnel, it's very handy to have in your deck. You can also use a non-aligned outpost, but it's mainly for non-aligned personnel. And this is Husnock. It has shields of 40. It's a pretty nice outpost. No weapons again, but awesome card. You've got outposts like the Borg, which have the highest shields at 48. If you're playing a Borg deck, you obviously want one or two of these in your deck. When the later expansions came out with Deep Space Nine and themed cards, you had the introduction of stations. So, for example, the Cardassians had Alliance Nor. Well, this is actually from the Mirror Universe set, but it's indicative of Nor, which is a universal station. Weapon 6, shields 30. Not entirely impressive, but you can put it at any spaceland location in the Mirror. Or if you have the regular Nor, you can put it anywhere like that. Deep Space Nine itself is a very interesting card. This is a dual affiliation card, and it might not look at it, but you flip it over, you go from Bajoran to Cardassian, but it's not a unique card. It's either Terok Nor or it's Deep Space Nine. However, when you're playing station cards like these, you don't have to use site cards, but they do make using a station a lot easier, and you can do a lot more with them. One of the reasons why I don't use Deep Space Nine or Terok Nor in the affiliated decks is because I have to use way too many site cards and it bogs down the game. But certain site cards you need if you're playing a station, so ops to direct operations, docking pylons or docking ports or landing pads if you want to service ships, and cargo bay if you want to store things there. Now, there are more sites like the infirmary, the promenade, things like that, depending on what you want to do. Again, you're going to run into a lot of unnecessary cards in your deck. It's up to you if you're going to use a station in your Bajoran or Cardassian deck. Just be aware that you're going to be using a lot more cards in that deck than you probably want to, and it's going to take longer to get them out. My advice would be, no matter what affiliation you use, as I mentioned earlier, have a neutral outpost in your deck, or at the very least, if you're doing a two-affiliation deck, make sure you have some non-aligned outposts. They'll come in handy. Now, as for the number of outpost cards you should have in your deck, normally, believe it or not, I only have one in my main draw deck, and I have a neutral outpost in my side deck should I need it. You really don't need more than one affiliated outpost unless you're planning on some grandiose scheme of conquest and you're going to have tons of ships, which nobody really does anyways. The most I've ever seen in a deck for outposts is 3. So it would be 2 affiliated outpost and one neutral or a non-aligned. That's really all you need. And if you're playing Cardassian or Bajoran, you're going to have one outpost and one station, maybe two stations. That's a bit excessive. That's all for today. Have a great day.